For years, Ted Bundy was seen as an isolated monster, an individual who acted alone. But as more evidence comes to light, the chilling possibility arises that Bundy's crimes were part of a much larger network of killers. What if Bundy wasn't the only one manipulating and deceiving? What if there were others, hidden in the shadows, working alongside him, or even guiding his actions? Some experts now believe that Bundy was part of a global network of killers, one that may have spanned decades and continents. Bundy wasn't alone in his brutality. In fact, many serial killers active during the same time period shared eerily similar characteristics. John Wayne Gacy, Gary Ridgway, Richard Ramirez, each with their own brutal reign of terror. But could there have been more to their stories? Some experts believe that Bundy's name might be linked to these killers not as a mere coincidence, but as part of a larger underground network. What if these killers weren't just operating independently, but were connected in ways that we have yet to uncover? The killer network theory suggests that Bundy, Gacy, Ridgway, and others were not just isolated criminals, but possibly working within a broader framework of murderers who shared tactics, communication, and resources. Imagine a covert group silent and deadly, passing on knowledge, aiding one another in evading capture, and potentially even protecting one another. But how could such a network remain hidden for so long, and what was their endgame? We've seen a clear pattern among these killers. Bundy's methods were unique in many ways, but he also displayed certain behaviors we've seen in other killers: patterns of manipulation, the same victim type, similar locations for the crimes. The chances that this was mere coincidence are slim. It's possible that Bundy was part of an underground network that exchanged information, learned from one another, and even covered for each other. These were men who knew how to evade authorities, and there's a chilling possibility that they didn't act alone. Bundy's charm and charisma were key to his ability to deceive, but could they have been used for something more sinister? What if Bundy was more than just a killer? What if he was a recruiter, someone who helped bring others into the network, using his persona to gain trust and bring in new killers to the fold? The idea that Bundy wasn't simply a lone killer, but an active participant in a larger operation, makes us rethink everything about his character. He wasn't just charming, he was dangerous, and his connections were far-reaching. But what was the purpose of this so-called network? Was there a deeper, more chilling agenda at play here? Were these killers working for a specific cause, a hidden order, or were they simply creating chaos for the sake of it? Some believe that this network wasn't about murder for murder's sake. It was about power over the people, power over the authorities, and ultimately, power over life and death itself. Could Bundy and his associates have been part of a larger mission to terrorize the public in ways we can't even begin to imagine? As we dig deeper, we start to realize that Bundy wasn't just another sick mind, he was a part of something much larger. His manipulation skills, his charm, his ability to create false personas, all these traits may have made him an ideal candidate for a more sinister role in this network. Perhaps Bundy wasn't just a killer, perhaps he was a cog in a much darker machine, designed to spread terror and confusion across the globe. Now, as we step back and look at the bigger picture, we see a disturbing web of connections stretching across the globe. Bundy wasn't just acting within the confines of the US, his influence may have spanned continents. Could this be the work of an international killer network that operated under the radar, its members working together without ever being caught? And if Bundy was part of this, what does it mean for the unsolved murders still haunting us today? Ted Bundy's story may be over, but the questions remain. Was he part of something far more sinister? And how deep does the conspiracy really go? The connections between Bundy and other infamous killers could still be hidden, waiting to be uncovered. As chilling as it is, the truth may be out there, but it's a truth that may never fully be revealed. For now, we are left with the terrifying possibility that Bundy was just one of many who operated in the shadows, manipulating and killing in the name of something greater. For years, experts believed Bundy was an isolated figure, an anomaly in the world of serial killers. But as more evidence surfaces, the possibility arises that Bundy was part of a much larger, organized network, one that spanned the globe, operating under the radar. What if Bundy wasn't just an individual killer, but a key player in a vast criminal syndicate that has remained hidden for decades? This theory suggests that Bundy may have had a direct connection to global criminal organizations, groups with influence, resources, and power beyond what we could have ever imagined. Throughout his killing spree, Bundy was known for his ability to manipulate everyone around him, his victims, the authorities, and even those closest to him. What if Bundy's manipulation skills were part of a larger agenda? What if he was working with powerful criminal syndicates, organizations that had the means to protect him, to help him evade capture, and to further his sinister goals? Could Bundy have been part of an international network that used his killings as part of a larger scheme? Reports from several countries have started to reveal disturbing links between Bundy's known movements and criminal activity in foreign nations. These criminal organizations operated in secrecy, and some were known to exploit and even recruit killers like Bundy for their own purposes. Could it be that Bundy wasn't just operating alone, but was part of a network that spanned continents, one that used his charm, intelligence, and brutality for their own gain? Experts have speculated that Bundy's charm wasn't just a personal trait, it may have been cultivated and used by powerful forces. Was Bundy simply a pawn in a much larger game, manipulated by powerful criminal syndicates that needed him to carry out specific missions? These organizations were not just limited to local criminals, they had global reach, resources, and connections that allowed them to control events from behind the scenes. Could Bundy have been used to distract, to instill fear, or even to cover up something far darker? Throughout Bundy's trial, many wondered, why didn't he reveal the full extent of his connections? Why did he remain tight-lipped, refusing to provide crucial details about his actions and the people behind him? Was Bundy protecting a larger network, a network that may still exist today? His silence could be the key to understanding the full scope of his influence. What if Bundy's refusal to confess was more than just an attempt to protect himself, but a deliberate effort to protect those he was working with? As law enforcement continues to examine unsolved cases, they're finding chilling similarities to Bundy's crimes. But now, investigators are starting to see patterns that suggest these killings weren't just random acts of violence, they were connected. Could these cold cases be linked to Bundy's syndicate? And if so, what does that mean for the killers still out there today? Are they part of a broader, more sinister network? One that Bundy was a part of and possibly helped build? Could Bundy's syndicate have been working with or alongside powerful criminal organizations, including drug cartels, human trafficking rings, and other underworld entities? Some investigators believe Bundy's killings were just the surface of a much deeper and darker conspiracy, one that used murder as a means to control, distract, and manipulate the public. These organizations were known for using killers like Bundy to do their bidding, removing anyone who got in their way. As we step back and take a closer look at the evidence, one thing becomes clear: Ted Bundy's legacy is far from over. Could he have been part of a much larger criminal syndicate that still operates in the shadows today? These syndicates have evolved with the times, using modern technology to evade detection and control their networks. What if Bundy's influence was merely a small part of a much more terrifying global conspiracy, one that still exists and continues to thrive? As we conclude this final chapter of the Ted Bundy series, we're left with a chilling question. Was Bundy truly an isolated monster, or was he part of something far darker, something that continues to haunt us today? The connections we've uncovered suggest that Bundy's legacy is not just the story of a killer, but the story of a criminal syndicate that reached far beyond the borders of the United States. Could Bundy's influence still be alive today, operating in the shadows, waiting to strike? Many of us believe that serial killers operate in the shadows, far removed from the halls of power. But what if Ted Bundy wasn't just hiding in plain sight? What if he was moving through corridors of power, rubbing shoulders with those in positions of influence? What if Bundy's killings weren't just random acts of violence, but part of a much larger, sinister scheme orchestrated by powerful elites? Could Bundy have been involved with political figures who used his ability to manipulate and evade capture to further their own dark agendas? In the 1970s and 1980 seconds, political corruption and secretive power structures were at their peak. Political elites, business magnates, and influential figures held sway over society in ways that remain largely hidden. Some investigators believe Bundy may have been linked to these influential figures, his crimes being shielded, perhaps even encouraged, by individuals whose power could have. One of the most chilling chapters in US history is the story of Mulcultra, a covert CIA program that experimented on individuals using drugs, hypnosis, and other mind-altering techniques. The goal? to break the human mind, to control behavior, and to create unwitting subjects who could be used as tools for espionage or assassination. But what if Ted Bundy wasn't just a random victim of a tragic upbringing? What if he was a subject of mulcultura, manipulated and conditioned into becoming the monster we know today? What if Bundy's transformation from a charming law student to a cold-blooded killer was part of a government experiment gone horribly wrong? Ted Bundy's rise to infamy is baffling, not only because of his violent crimes, but because of his background. He was, by all accounts, an intelligent, well-spoken young man with a bright future. So, what could have turned him into one of the most notorious serial killers in American history? Experts believe that Bundy may have been the perfect candidate for a mind control experiment. His charm, his intelligence, and his ability to deceive made him an ideal subject for manipulation. Could his disturbing transformation into a killer have been engineered by those in power? And if Bundy was under the influence of mind-altering techniques, could he have been used to carry out a deadly agenda? One of the core components of mulcultura was hypnosis. The CIA conducted countless experiments in an attempt to manipulate individuals. Through hypnotic suggestion, Bundy's calm, almost emotionless demeanor during his crimes raises the possibility that he was subjected to such conditioning. Could Bundy have been programmed, not just to kill, but to erase his own memories of his actions, creating the perfect assassin who acted without remorse or guilt? His inability to fully comprehend the horrors he committed may have been the result of intense psychological conditioning. His mind altered so deeply that he became a weapon, a puppet controlled by unseen hands during his trial and subsequent prison interviews. Bundy's behavior was chillingly detached. He was often asked about his crimes, his motivations, and why he committed such brutal acts. But what if Bundy's responses weren't just the musings of a psychopathic killer? What if they were conditioned responses, the result of a mind control program that erased his true memories? Bundy's confessions were oddly calculated, offering little in terms of genuine remorse, and his refusal to fully admit to his crimes has always been a point of contention. Was this the result of a subconscious programming that prevented him from revealing the truth? Could Bundy's mind have been so deeply manipulated that he was unaware of the true extent of his actions? Mulcultura was officially halted in the 1970s, but its effects are still debated to this day. Many subjects of the program, like those subjected to LSD and hypnosis, exhibited strange, unpredictable behavior. Could Bundy's sudden and erratic shift from law student to serial killer be explained by the same techniques used on other mulcultura subjects? After his capture, Bundy underwent extensive psychological evaluations, but many questions remain about what was truly going on in his mind. What if Bundy wasn't just guilty of his crimes? What if he was part of an experiment gone horribly wrong, where he was the one being tested, manipulated, and pushed into committing murder without truly understanding why? What if Bundy's crimes were more than just an isolated incident? What if his killings were part of a broader, government-controlled strategy to create chaos, manipulate the public, and fuel fear in a specific political context? Some experts believe that Bundy's actions may have served the interests of those in power who could have used his notoriety to distract from political turmoil or sway public opinion. Bundy, a product of mind control, could have been an unwitting pawn in a much larger game, where his actions were being used to shape the nation's narrative. As we step back and look at the full picture, we're left with a chilling question. Was Ted Bundy truly just a monster, or was he the product of something far more sinister, a government mind control experiment that turned him into a killer? Could Bundy have been manipulated by those in power, used as a tool in a covert program designed to test the limits of human behavior? The truth may be buried in government files, locked away under layers of secrecy, but what's clear is that Bundy's life and crimes are far more complex than we could ever have imagined. As we conclude this series, we're left with one last haunting thought. Could Ted Bundy have been the victim of a mind control experiment, manipulated into becoming the monster we know today? Or was he truly a willing participant in the horrors he committed? The answers remain hidden, locked away by those who may never want the truth to come out. But what's certain is that Bundy's legacy is one of manipulation, power, and fear, leaving us with more questions than answers. The story of Ted Bundy may be over, but the nightmare he left behind continues to haunt you. Over the years, we've seen a troubling pattern in the lives of certain infamous serial killers: Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Gary Ridgway, and others. What if they weren't just operating independently? What if their violent acts were the result of something much darker? Could these killers have been subjects of the same mind control experiments we've linked to Bundy? What if Bundy's story isn't the only one, but part of a broader government agenda, targeting individuals to manipulate, test, and ultimately control? John Wayne Gacy and Gary Ridgway, two of America's most notorious serial killers, both committed heinous acts, killing dozens of innocent victims. But what if there was more to their stories than we've been told? Gacy, a seemingly charming man, and Ridgway, a methodical killer, both displayed characteristics that seemed to echo Bundy's inability to blend into society in eerie calmness and the ability to evade justice for years. Could these killers have been manipulated or even conditioned, like Bundy, by forces beyond their control? At the heart of Mulcultura and other covered experiments was the desire to control human behavior. If Bundy was a product of these programs, what about Gacy, Ridgway, and others? Could they have been subjects in similar experiments testing the limits of human behavior and pushing individuals into violence? These experiments weren't just limited to Bundy, they spanned a range of subjects, from political operatives to ordinary citizens, and the government's interest in mind control may have extended far beyond Bundy's case. As we delve deeper into the declassified files, we start to see a disturbing pattern emerge: names, dates, and places that link Bundy to other serial killers and subjects of similar experiments. What if these men were part of a government-controlled program that spanned decades? Were they all manipulated and turned into killers for a larger political or psychological agenda? Could these killers have been selected, trained, or even brainwashed into committing crimes for reasons beyond their understanding? The Mulcultura program officially ended in the 1970s, but the impact of its psychological manipulation lasted far longer. Behavioral scientists have long debated the long-term effects of these experiments on those who were subjected to them. Could the killings of Bundy, Gacy, Ridgway, and others be the result of a larger government experiment that stretched beyond the 60s and 70s? The truth may never fully be revealed, but what we do know is this: these killers were not just acting on their own, they were part of a much larger and much more sinister system. What if these killers and others like them were never truly free agents? What if their actions were guided, controlled, and manipulated by forces beyond their comprehension? What if the mind control techniques used on Bundy were not just experiments from the past, but tools still in use today? The terrifying possibility remains that these killers were not the sole authors of their own crimes, but rather victims of a larger, darker system, one that continues to shape events in ways we may never fully understand. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed, and for many, that was the end of the nightmare. But what if Bundy's death was not the end at all? What if he was merely one piece in a much larger experiment, one that continued long after his execution? Could other serial killers still be subjects of similar experiments, manipulated by forces beyond their control? The truth behind Bundy's life and the lives of other killers may be buried in files we may never see, locked away from the public's eyes forever. As we bring this series to a close, we are left with one chilling thought: was Ted Bundy and others like him merely pawns in a much larger game, victims of a government program that used their actions as tools for a darker agenda? The legacy of Mulcultura and mind control may still be with us today, hidden in plain sight, and the killers we know and fear may not have been acting on their own. They may have been manipulated into becoming the monsters we fear.